What's up, everybody out there today? What's going on with everybody out there today, y'all? Everybody doing good? I hope so. You know what I'm saying? Another day. Let's see if I can share my screen a little bit. I'm trying to figure this out. I'm trying to see what we got going on today with everybody. Who caught that Tyson Fury fight? Everybody was interested in that? Anybody? Anybody was interested in Tyson Fury's fight? I guess that didn't working out very well. So we're gonna keep moving. I'm saying cancel. Boom. So yeah, this is called Garden to Garden, y'all. Coming up, you have kids and everything. You know what I mean. We're all trying to safeguard, uh, the impressions of things, their identity, essentially, of that child, of the child. You know what I mean. So I've got me something I prepared for y'all today up on that topic because I wanted to stay on topic and not just freestyle and rant and rave and things like that. So what we got here is a prepared, a prepared topic for you guys. So with that being said, hope everybody had a good evening today. And tonight we're gonna be exploring something universal, guys. Something that shapes every human life. And I'm talking about identity, where it begins, how it develops, and how easily it can be influenced without our awareness, right? And I say that because my journey into this type of work didn't begin when I became a father, as you just seen a child, right? It began the moment I entered the world, just like all of us, right? We came up as children, if you're a teenager, and then, you're an adult. So it began the moment I entered the world. So the identity was starting to begin to be formed by the things inside and outside of your home. Because identity formation starts long before we have language for it. We inherit. Excuse me. Yeah, we inherit impressions, expectations, and patterns that shape us in ways we don't always recognize, right? So tonight we're going to look at those forces, and how they work and how we can protect the next generation from the influences that distort, distract, or diminish them totally. Okay. And that's universal. That's why I stayed on there. It's universal. Right. So as we proceed, this is the first topic, the first subject of this matter that we're going to speak on. And that's when I say garden to garden, I use the garden as a metaphor for identity. You know, I use the word garden to describe the inner world, our sense of self, our emotional foundation, our values, and our worldview, right? Every child begins life with an inner garden, and that's all of us. We all came from children, right? That inner garden is open, it's impressionable, it's full of potential, it's shaped by what is planted there. And here's the truth. Here's the absolute truth, guys. Family. Here's the absolute truth. Every garden grows something. Every garden produces a plant and then a fruit, right? The question is what and who is doing the planting, right? You got to understand what you're planting and who's doing that planting. If we don't internally cultivate identity, the world will do it for us, often carelessly. You got a garden and you don't nurture it. You don't, go out there and do the pruning, go out there, cut back, do the things you need to do. Then nature take care of that for you. In this case, we're talking about identity and presence. So the world will do it, your gardening for you. And it's often carelessly. Let's just face it, right? Children absorb everything: tone, environment, media, culture, expectations, silence, stress, affection, and absence. Those impressions become the foundation of who they believe they are. You know, like when you're a child and you may grow up in a single parent home, either way, single parent. That's why, didn't use a gender with that single parent home. And that kind of defines who you are coming up, right? Because all the things that I listed above, that's the tone, that's environment, media, culture, expectations, silence, stress, affection, and absence. Those impressions become the foundation. Those impressions become the foundation of who they believe they are, right? Excuse me, guys. Aaron, just go in there. Go in there, please. Man. All right, guys. The three forces that shape us. Through my own life and research, this is what's coming to y'all, man. This is through my own life experiences and my own research. I've discovered a pattern. There's three forces that shape identity more than anything else. And this is just due to my own life and my own research into these matters. I've discovered, I've kind of pinned down three things, right? And these three things are impression, right? Impression starts what we're exposed to, what we see, hear, and experience repeatedly, right? Then the second one is obsession, what we begin to focus on, chase, or internalize the ideas that take root into your mind. And then the third of those is oppression, the limitations we eventually accept as truth, the beliefs that confine us. This cycle affects children, adults, communities, and entire cultures, y'all. You know what I'm saying, family? It affects us all, one way or another, unless we interrupt it as a family. Unless we interrupt it, it repeats itself over and over and over again. We're talking about cross generations, right? Because these are the things that I through my life and through the research I've done, I've kind of discovered the three factors. Those three factors, y'all. And that's oppression, obsession, then that leads to your oppression, right? The moment we realize we've been shaped, most of us can look back at and identify a moment when we realize I'm not acting from my true self. I'm acting from something I absorbed. You're not acting, just think about it, right? Everybody goes through it. When you lose identity of yourself due to those things, the things you take in. You know what I mean? Maybe it was belief about your worth. Maybe it was a belief you didn't have the proper worth, self-worth about yourself. It could be those things. Maybe it was fear, right? Maybe you was apprehensive and fear or scared for some reason. Maybe it was pressure to fit a role. We're all trying to fit a role. Pressure comes in and things happen and you just kind of lose identity. Or maybe it was a message you heard so often that it became part of your identity. That moment when you recognize the influence is powerful. Awareness is the beginning of change. Awareness is change. Once we understand how we've been shaped, we can become intentional about how we shape the next generation. You see, like with that, like they going by, they see I'm trying to do something. I'm trying to tell them not talk, but keep it down. Keep it down. That's called respect. All right. And then there's a moment where we reflect. This is the reflection moment. And we take a moment to reflect. What early impressions shaped you, right? What messages did you absorb without questioning? What messages did you observe without questioning? What beliefs do you accept that didn't come from your true self, right? The impression. What beliefs do you accept that didn't come from your own mind, your own true self? All right. How might those patterns still influence you today? How do they influence you today? Just go back to when you were a little kid, guys, and ask yourself, what early impressions shaped you? And be honest with yourself. Once you start to do that, maybe you can pull yourself out of those impressions because they are rooted in you by now, right? What messages did you absorb without questioning? What beliefs did you accept that didn't come from your true self? How might those patterns still influence you today? I'm 47 years old, y'all, right? And this is the things that, I'm coming to realize, guys. And I want to share this with y'all. I prepared this, I say my own life story mixed with research on this matter that we're speaking on today, family. I'm only doing this because I care about the future, mine and yours. You see what I'm saying? Now, consider the children in your life, right? And that's what I do all the time. What oppressions are shaping them right now? And I be seeing who or what is influencing their self of sense or their sense of self, excuse me. Who, right? We got all these impressions around here. And then you start to see who your kid is, who's impressing them, and are they good or bad? Do you like that impression on them or don't you? You know what I mean? What messages are they absorbing from their environment? Like our environment matters. The environment matters. What you go outside and you got, pimp pushers and players, or you go outside and you got, a different type rich people. So they're gonna have two different type of influence on that said child, right? We can be honest with that. All right. Awareness is the first step in guarding your garden, right? Being aware of who they're around, what they're talking about, just like your parents were, but it's sticking to it, steady trying to cultivate those things in that child so they can be able to be aware of the impressions and the good and the bad about absorbing things without doing your own knowledge and doing your own research on it, doing your own reading, right? It's kind of a bad thing to just be told something without questioning. All right. Here's the role of the adult, the guardian or the guide or the gardener. Every child needs someone who understands the power of influence, right? And that's the thing. Nobody is really focusing on this stuff. The power of influence is real. How do you think you are who you are? How do you think you came through what you came through because you was influenced by something or someone or somewhere, right? Someone who is present enough to notice. Somebody got to be noticing, man. I can see where this is going. I can see what they're influenced by. I can see that how their attitude, I can see it, right? So you got to notice these things. Attentive enough to guide, strong enough to set boundaries, wise enough to teach discernment, right? Wise enough to teach discernment. First of all, you have to recognize it when you see it, right? You have to recognize when you see it. Then you have to be attentive enough to guide the person, right? Strong enough to set boundaries for that individual, and wise enough to teach them discernment. That's what it got to be when you're dealing with this impressive world. What do they call them? Content creators, but they call them, what do they call them? The content creators. They call them something, but it leads to the word impression. They got a lot of people impressed out here, but are they giving you something you can grow from? Are they giving you something you can learn from? Or are they on here just pandering to your impressionable self? Right? So, with that being said, guys, to to guard a child's inner world is not to shelter them from life. That is obvious. You cannot shelter somebody from going through life, right? It's the This is why you got to go outside, right? I like to say that I tell kids, this is a safe, this is a garden, but once you go outside the garden, I can't prevent what's going on out there. I can't stop what's going to potentially happen to you. All I can do is give you the guidance to discernment to see where these impressions are coming from and to delineate if they're good or bad for you, because it gets rooted in you. It becomes obsession then, and then you will be oppressed by that when you're 50 years old by something you got impressed by when you were 16. See what I'm saying? Does that make sense, fam? Right? So we don't need to try to shelter them through life. It is to help them interpret life as you go, because I have another saying is that you're every age you've ever been, right? So if I've been 10, I can still, I'm still in the essence of a 10-year-old when I want to, because I've been there. And the world doesn't change, people in the world change, right? And that's just the bottom line, fam. We just trying to keep it real right here with this channel right here. That's why it's called, better than takeout, but that's why it's called getting rid of the ego, because this is real love I'm giving y'all right now. This is real love, because you hear my children in the background, guys. So this is something that is near and dear to me, and I speak on it all the time, right? And I just had to put something to it so I can give you something structured, something cohesive, and something you can understand. All right. So it's our job to help them interpret life. It's our job to help them understand what is true, what is false, and what is simply noise, right? You got a lot of people, and Noble Raleigh says, man is a strange mix of truth and falsehoods. Do you understand what I'm saying? Did that make sense, family? So it's our job to help them understand what is true, what is false, and what is simply just noise to occupy your mind and distract you. And then that's a whole nother game, right? Where you distracted, you got your guard down because you're distracted by the noise. So our role is not to control their identity, but to protect the space where identity forms, right? We have to protect the space where their identity forms. We're not trying to control who they want to be or don't want to be in life, or their identity per se, but we are trying to protect the space where that identity forms, because impressions are everywhere, guys. We all go through this. Is universal. This is universal to an old man like me, 47, to a young man like you, whatever. This is the reality. Okay. All right, y'all. So tonight there was just an introduction. We laid the foundation. I have four parts. This is the first. Okay. I'm just now learning how to navigate this studio and things like that. So therefore I can give alerts and everything. But this is part one of this topic. And tonight we laid down the foundation. We explored how identity begins. We explored how identity is shaped and why intentional guidance matters, right? Your intentions have got to matter. And it's the awareness of said intentions, right? In part two, we'll look at the forces that influence identity in today's world, right? Media, culture, peers, technology, and the subtle message that shape how children see themselves, y'all. Right? Isn't this universal, family? Isn't this a universal topic? Right? This symposium, guys, the symposium is about awareness, empowerment, and legacy, and family. Together, we're building the tools to protect the next generation. Right? This was a universal topic. And if everybody, just part one resonated with you, if it resonated with you and you liked what you heard and you can learn something from it, can we please tune in for the second one, and I'm going to send out the notices and everything. And I also welcome comments, and I also welcome, feedback. You know, I'm just getting fairly new at this, but I've had a lot on my mind, and I've taken the time from love to try to each one teach one and formulate my thoughts to put it into text so that way I can bring it to you guys in words, heartfelt words that I'm not on here trying to swindle you. I'm trying to empower each and every one of us because we all we got. You know what I mean? I wouldn't let your child go through nothing if I was around that I could prevent, if I knew how to prevent. And I would just do anything to try to help, propel us into a better place, y'all. So just spread the love, share the love, y'all. Each one teach one. And I appreciate everybody that stayed up here with me. As you can see, I don't get up here and have a lot of filler words and things like that. I make my stuff concise and the context right where it needs to be because I understand that people have lives and people are busy with their life. And I understand that, you know, you don't have a lot of time to sit up here and watch me go on and on and on. So that was the Garden family. That was part one of this symposium. Please join me for part two. I will put the time and date that I will be dropping this. So I appreciate everybody, the thumbs up, and I appreciate the person still engaging with me right now. But let's all just be good, man, and be nice to each other and each one teach one, y'all. I appreciate it, man. And everybody, peace.